I'm Alex Michelson. This week, the issue is the race for California governor. Congresswoman Katie Porter is here with us in studio for the first TV sit-down of her campaign, which launched this week. Plus, Republican strategist Mike Madrid on how Trump is winning over so many Latinos. Then,
so is our Governor Newsom, is he Chamberlain or is he Churchill?
a preview of our exclusive one-on-one with Jane Fonda, slamming the governor and fighting big oil. The issue is starts right now.
Broadcasting across California, you're watching The Issue Is.
What California needs now is a little bit of hope and a whole lot of grit. Fresh blood and new ideas, and leaders with the backbone to fight for what's right. That's why I'm running for governor.
That is former Democratic Congresswoman Katie Porter announcing her run for governor of California this week. Welcome to The Issue Is. I'm Alex Michelson. Thanks so much for being with us. Joining us now for her first local TV sit-down of the campaign is Congresswoman Katie Porter. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Congratulations on the run.
Appreciate it. I'm really excited.
So in the past, we've always talked to you about mostly federal issues. You've never run for statewide office before or local office before. Why do you want to be governor?
Well, look, I think right now the federal and the state are going to come together. Why do I say that? Because the governor is going to have two big tasks, and they're going to have to be able to do both. One is stand up to Trump, block and tackle attacks that are coming, try to push Trump to deliver for California where we can, and at the same time, focus on California's challenges. Things like the cost of housing, which is something I've worked on my whole career, childcare, which continues to be a big problem for families after the pandemic, and making sure that our economy is strong and growing. So I think being able to know how to negotiate with the federal government, knowing where those levers are, I think we're all getting a crash course in just how important that is in these first months of Trump's presidency.
Is there some people that saw that Trump being such a big part of your announcement and thought, why not talk more about local issues? And maybe argue that with Trump, you've got to try to get him on your side to give money. I mean, we see Newsom has really softened his approach to Trump. Is the best way to deal with Trump to sort of punch him in the face, or is the best way to try to shake his hand?
Well, one of the things I've said before is I will say yes to anybody, right, and I will also say no to anybody. I think I have a reputation throughout the state as a straight shooter, as somebody who cannot be bought, not by any entity or any organization. So where there are opportunities to work with Trump, and I think Governor Newsom did the right thing, asking Trump to come and look at the wildfires, walking with him, showing him what California needs. We need a strong advocate for California with how we engage with the federal government, just like we need a strong advocate for statewide concerns when we're dealing with local and county government.
So in your ad, you talked about that you want to bring some big new ideas. What is one big new idea that you're bringing? Yeah,
so housing is going to be the sort of most top of mind, laser focused on housing. I think we've seen California make some progress using the housing targets, the affordable housing targets in each community. They have not gotten us where we need to be, which is making housing affordable for that next generation of workers, for the folks who are graduating from our universities. And so we're going to need to think about how to do that. Part of that is going to involve being willing to look at the CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, and see where it is being used, not to protect any serious environmental concerns, but in fact just to block housing developments.
So if you had to concisely say the sort of the big idea on housing, it's what? It's CEQA reform, or
it is to unleash more building more quickly. Right? So it's not just saying we need more housing, which I think the governor, so CEQA reform is part of it. Yeah. California making investments in some of the infrastructure for communities. So the sewer, the water, all of those things drive up costs for builders. Yeah. And we could think of those things as infrastructure, because housing is infrastructure for our entire economy. And then prevention of homelessness, really thinking about how can we get ahead of people becoming homeless, because we know that once someone experiences chronic homelessness, it's very, very challenging and very, very expensive to address it.
So we know that you worked with Vice President Harris when she was Attorney General Harris. You like her a lot. You've said in the past that if Vice President Harris runs for governor, it would have a field clearing effect. Does that include you? Are you out of the race if she's in?
So I'm one of the people who've gotten to see firsthand just exactly how talented she is when she's serving California. I saw that when she was our Attorney General. And so if she were to declare for governor, that would everyone, including me, would have to think hard about whether to stay in the race.
But isn't that sort of an odd thing to say? Basically, I'm the best person except for her.
Well,
or,
I think
or give me money unless you want to give her money.
No, she's not asking for money, right?
No,
she's
no,
not
but,
in the
but,
race,
no, but
right?
that's part of the. That's the thinking, right? That you got to get in now because everybody's got to raise so much money. She doesn't need to necessarily raise as much money because she's got 100% name ID and she's got the fundraising behind her anyways, and that's why everybody's doing it, and she can wait.
I don't think it would do well for us all to sit around. The vice president has said it may take many, many months for her to come to a decision,
right.
and respectfully, she's entitled to that time.
So you could see a scenario where she gets in and you stay in?
Well, I think it would depend on what happens and what she says when she gets in and when she gets in. If she announces tomorrow, Elex, I think it's pretty tough for everybody.
Yeah.
If she decides the day before the filing deadline, a few months before the election, I think that's a very different situation, both for her and for Californians, not just for me.
So a lot of people feel like one of her biggest mistakes when she was running for president was when she went on The View and they asked her, how would you be different than President Biden? And she didn't really have an answer. So I'm going to ask you the same question about Governor Newsom. Mm-hmm. How would you be different as governor than him?
Well, I have a lot of respect for what Governor Newsom's done, and a couple of things he's done have really improved my life. He made school lunch free for every single kid in California. You want to talk about bringing down costs? That put hundreds of dollars a month back in my pocket. He made community college free. I've got kids heading to college and knowing they can go to community college. So a lot of respect for those ideas. I think one difference is I'm going to try to focus more intensely on a couple of the biggest problems. And that was difficult for Governor Newsom to do, in part because of the pandemic, the recall. There have been a lot of wildfires several times. We're going to keep seeing that stuff. I think that makes it all the more important that you are committed to focusing on what is the biggest challenge we are facing. The cost of housing is our biggest challenge.
You know, there's a lot of people when you talk about housing who see the fact that we've just had these wildfires and the response now is, let's get rid of a lot of these building regulations. Let's suspend CEQA in these areas. And there's people that think, well, why don't we do that everywhere? If we can do that now, maybe we should do that for everywhere. It would help with building. Do you see there's any value in that?
No, so we definitely have to reevaluate CEQA as it applies to residential housing. We just have to. We are not going to be able to build fast enough and at a price point that makes the housing affordable for our workers. And so we need more workforce housing. We need more housing on dorms. We need more housing for seniors who want to age in place. And so we are going to have to think about CEQA. A couple things from a policy perspective that the governor has done. Want to see if you would continue them. One of the things he did was health care for undocumented people. It's been very expensive. Estimates say that it's billions of dollars over budget for where they expected it. Is that something that you think we should do? Is that something we should continue? Is that something we should rein back? Well, our goal should certainly be that every single person living in California is able to be healthy. That's good for all of us. There are going to be some hard choices coming for the next governor, and I think one of the things I would say to Californians is I'm tough and I'm capable of making hard choices. I don't need to be loved. I want to be successful.
So you would be open to basically killing or bringing back that program?
Well, I think we just need to look at the numbers. I mean, this is a math question.
Yeah, speaking of
Calls
math,
for a whiteboard.
Speaking of math, Medicare for All, which is something that's been talked about at the federal level. It's also been talked about at the state level. Hugely expensive. Part of the reason it hasn't happened yet. Do you think we need to do Medicare for All in California?
So I think that's best done at the federal level for a whole bunch of reasons, partly because people move, there's economies of scale to doing it. I think that that's something that we should continue to talk about at the federal level, but I don't think we should back away from California being a strong voice at the federal level.
Some of the wealthiest Californians pay among the highest taxes in the country. Governor Newsom has not raised taxes on the wealthy during his time. Do you think that we should? Do you think taxes are too high, too low, just right? What do you think?
So for me, the way to ask this is, what are we getting for our taxes? Right? So the question is not, there's no number that exists sort of in the abstract. It is, what are we getting? I think there's a lot of concern in California that one of the things we're not getting is an economy that's growing. We're not getting population that's growing. So I think you have to look at how are we using those tax dollars. With regard to any particular tax program, I'm not able to sketch out my entire budget for you here on air. I'm sure I'll be back to do that at some point.
Yeah. All right, you know we like to end with something called personal issues. This is fun, rapid-fire cultural favorites. We've done this with you before, so we want to get to your recent stuff, to sort of catch up with you, where you're at now, okay? So ready? 30 seconds, here we go. What's your favorite TV show you've watched recently?
Beef.
Oh, good one on Netflix. Favorite recent book? I know you're an avid reader.
I just read The Frozen River, which is an amazing book set in 1789 or 86 in rural Maine.
Wow, okay. Last concert you attended?
Oh, Bonnie Raitt. And it was so great. I was so thrilled. I have admired her for so long, and just to see her at this stage in her life, still rocking, still strong, still fighting, it was inspiring.
And what is the best vacation spot in California?
Ooh, I'm gonna keep it local and say Newport Beach.
That is a great spot. I wish I had some Let's Give Them Something to talk about. I'll have that next time for you. But thanks so much for coming on. Bonnie Raitt is having a moment right now.
She really is. Well deserved, well deserved.
We appreciate it, Congressman. Good luck out there on the campaign trail. Up next, a different perspective. Mike Madrid joins us, perhaps the top Latino voter expert in the state. His insights when we come back.
One of America's most influential Hispanics, Mike Madrid.
That is longtime political strategist Mike Madrid being announced as one of the most influential Latinos. Here is Mike's outstanding new book. It's called The Latino Century: How America's Largest Minority is Transforming Democracy. I couldn't recommend it more. Mike Madrid, welcome to The Issue Is for the first time. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
One of the smartest guys in the state. So for people that haven't read it yet and maybe don't know that much about your background, can you give us the sort of elevator pitch of your life?
Well, I'm a Republican political consultant. Spent about 30 years in Republican politics, but I've also have always been work with and been fascinated by the Latino vote, this emerging change of what's going to shape the country. That's helped me build a lot of friendships, relationships across the aisle. I have one of the few unique distinctions in this country, really, of running campaigns at very high levels for Democrats as well. So I've worked across both sides of the aisle. I argue in my book that neither party really understands this vote. I think we're seeing that play out in real time, not only in Washington, but also in Sacramento. And I think the country's in for this crash of reality as Latinos become a bigger part of the electorate on both sides of the aisle.
And you've worked hard against Donald Trump over the years, but still believe in a lot of the conservative values that made you a Republican to begin with.
Yeah, I think I'm still a Republican that way, a classical Reagan conservative, but co-founded the Lincoln Project to work against Donald Trump.
So give us some insight into why Latinos are voting for Donald Trump.
Yeah, it has lots to do with economic populism. One, Latinos are becoming much less animated by racial and ethnic issues, much more by economic pocketbook issues. My book was essentially a prediction. Back in June, we talked about this, of what was likely to come. It's always, I think, in some ways nice to be right in a prediction in a book and why it happened, but seeing Donald Trump elected probably wasn't what I would prescribe for what ails the country at this moment in time.
And also, as Latinos are here for multi-generations, you see a big change in that sense as well, right?
Yeah, and that's the biggest differentiation between Latinos is not whether or not you speak Spanish. It's not your country of origin, the difference between Cubans and Venezuelans and Mexican Americans. The largest demarcation by large measure is generational differences. And it is about 80% of Latinos are now U.S. born. That's dramatically different than 15 or 20 years ago. It's these younger, under 30, US-born, English-dominant Latinos that are rejecting sort of the politics of immigration being the prime view the way that they view the world, and it's much more focused on affordability, much more focused on economic pocketbook issues and the inaffordability of California to live and work.
And you've kind of found that the longer they're here, the more they sort of view immigration like white people.
That's exactly right. In fact, about a month before this last election in November, Telemundo did a poll showing 63% of Latinos felt the undocumented were a burden. That 63% is the exact same percentage of white voters that voted for Proposition 187 in 1994.
So if this whole thing is about affordability, is this tariffs, which we see happening now, potentially a huge Achilles heel for Trump?
There's no question. The souring economy, the loss of consumer confidence. I do have very high-level conversations with Democrats. My suggestion to them, my free advice to Democrats is start blaming the Trump tax or this Republican tax on housing. All Canadian lumber. Most of our homes are built with lumber from Canada. You start slapping a 25-30% tariff on taxes on Canadian lumber, you're dramatically increasing the cost of housing.
What do you make of the Democratic approach to this? The Democrats seem split on whether to put forward a budget, shut down the government, fighting with each other.
In many ways, the Democrats are not atypical of a party that's in the wilderness trying to find itself, but I think the dysfunction is really indicative of a larger generational split and perhaps even an ideological split. I think they're really due for a Tea Party moment, where there's going to be much more populist sentiment running against the establishment leaders of their own party. And I think you're going to start seeing a lot more outsider candidates being much more successful, both for governor and for president of the United States.
So one of the things Democrats are split on right now is Gavin Newsom's podcast.
Yeah.
You wrote a great Substack about this, sort of looking at his motivations.
Yeah.
What's your main point?
Well, my main point was this was either the worst launch for a presidential campaign in history, or it was the most brilliant launch of a media company in history. This is a generational talent. Whether you agree with Gavin Newsom or not, he is definitely one of the leaders of the Democratic Party. He may or may not run for president, but there's no question in my mind that this is about building an infrastructure to communicate with Americans broadly, Californians perhaps specifically, with a very non-traditional audience, and that's something the Democrats as a party have not figured out yet. He seems to be the first.
Let's talk about the governor's race.
Yeah.
You've been involved in California's governor's race before. You just were here and saw our interview with Katie Porter.
Yeah.
What did you make of what she said and her launch this week?
I think Katie has actually a very interesting message because she does come from a sort of populist left wing of the party, the Elizabeth Warren wing of the party, that is in many ways very anti-institutional. But I think that being just in elected office makes it very difficult to credibly make the case that Democrats have brought down housing in the state, because they haven't, or have made the economy better for working class people because they haven't in California, or made education better because they haven't, or homelessness better because they haven't. The Democrats need their own Sister Soldier moment. They need a huge pivot away from the voices that have held elected office and forced them to have a real honest conversation about how to best protect the values they say they believe in, especially when it comes to working class, poor people, and those on the margin.
Is there anybody you're especially interested or excited about?
I'm watching very closely and will probably be advising Steve Klubeck's race for governor.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So somebody who's been
a lot of people maybe not have heard of, who's a business guy.
He's running as a complete outsider, but a lifelong Democrat. Somebody who's given to Democratic causes candidates, was tapped by Barack Obama to lead up Brand USA to kickstart tourism in the wake of a 9/11. Somebody who's a successful Californian first and foremost, but my interest in this, and what I think is going to be most resonant, is he's willing to challenge the orthodoxy. You're hearing Katie Porter talk earlier, rightfully so. We probably need to start CEQA all over again, not just tinker on the edges. It's been a crisis for black and brown people and working class people in the state to get housing for 20 years. Why are we just now beginning to talk about this? Some people have been, and they need their voices elevated in the Democratic Party.
So you're Klubeck over Caruso.
I'm Klubeck over Caruso. I think Caruso's fine. I think he's a great candidate. I think he'd make a great mayor of Los Angeles. I think that's probably what he wants. That seems to be where he's leaning. I think if he wants to be mayor of LA, it's there for the taking. I think if you had Caruso and Klubeck being both mayor and governor, you've got a real change for California's fortunes, and I expect that might be what we end up seeing.
Interesting. All the conservatives in the race keep saying Caruso for mayor. Let's end with something called personal issues.
Yeah.
This is where we get to know your cultural favorites.
Okay.
First thing that comes to mind. What is your favorite TV show?
Boy, I don't watch a whole lot of TV, but I watch a lot of documentaries.
Any favorite documentaries?
I just finished the last Made in America documentary with O.J. Simpson.
Oh.
For a reason. Jim Newton, LA Times reporter, was a big part of that
That was
story.
one of the best documentaries ever.
Yeah.
Favorite movie?
Of all time?
Sure.
The original To Kill a Mockingbird.
Favorite book of all time?
I'm reading, I think, what might be my favorite book right now, which is Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America.
There's a throwback.
Yeah, it's been around a while. Not an original copy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And who is your role model?
Boy, my role model. Father Cosgrove, I think, a priest who kind of taught me the benefit of always looking out for the least among us and fighting for the least among us, regardless of the way the rest of the world sees you.
That is a great lesson and a great thing to end on.
Yeah.
Mike Madrid.
Always a pleasure.
Great to have you
Great
on
to
the
thank-
show.
thanks for
Thank
having
you
me.
so much. We really appreciate it. Up next, we get into the politics of oil with Jane Fonda from Santa Barbara. This week, we sat down exclusively with Jane Fonda in Santa Barbara. The actress and activist is helping to lead a protest against Sable Oil, which wants to restart oil production in the Santa Barbara Channel. That production stopped back in 2015 with the Refugio oil spill. Jane Fonda wants to make sure that it never starts again, and she's frustrated that Governor Gavin Newsom hasn't done more to stop it.
So is our Governor Newsom, is he Chamberlain or is he Churchill?
What do you think?
Right now he's Chamberlain. He's been Churchill. This is what's so insane. He's been brave about a lot of things, and then suddenly, what's going on? Cozying up to Steve Bannon is not a way to, what he does by doing that is he forfeits his ability to inspire and protect the very people that elected him. We need him to stand up. We need all of our leaders now to stand up and put an end to this issue of a Texas oil company with a corroded pipeline who just want to make money. We need leadership, and if it's a cause of concern to see him, this brave governor, suddenly get silent and not step up, not immediately come to the rescue of the people here and say, no, this isn't going to happen. We have laws to prevent this from happening.
Next week on The Issue Is, our extended conversation with Jane Fonda on her decades of activism. Plus, we talked to Julia Louis-Dreyfus, the VP of Sable, and Governor Newsom's top environmental advisor. All that next week on The Issue Is. Go to break with a shot of the Santa Barbara coast. We'll wrap things up for this week after this.
The goal is not to put people in jail. It's to create accountability for coming indoors, and if someone is truly unable to accept that help, get them over to the county where hopefully they can get the help that they need.
That is San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan talking to me about the case for arresting homeless people who refuse housing over and over again. This week, I also spoke one-on-one with Assemblymember Isaac Bryan about his push to increase pay for incarcerated firefighters. And I caught up in studio with Josh Friday, California's Chief Service Officer, who is expanding California's Service Corps program. All of those conversations can be found online right now at youtube.com/Elex Michelson. We also encourage you to check out our show in podcast form. Just search for The Issue Is wherever you stream. We'll see you next week with Jane Fonda.